Yeah, don't mind me. This is it's nothing. Just what would you say your favorite show was growing up again? No, just right there. You could say it right there. Yeah. Dynamic entry. That's right. Today we're going to be talking about favorite shows growing up, but not. We've done that before. We're going to be talking about specific places from shows that I watched growing up. So let's talk about it. Okay, so shows growing up always had probably the same things that most shows had. They had cool characters, cool stories, and cool locations. That's right. Today I'm going to be talking about my top 5 favorite fictional locations that I've seen in shows I watched growing up. Because what's a good show without a good location? It's nothing. You want your characters to hang out somewhere that's really cool, and you want the people watching it to be like, hey, I wish I could be there hanging out with them. It makes you feel more immersed in the show that you're watching. And for me, like I said, I have a top 5 list, but for me, these places that I watched growing up made me feel comfortable, made me feel like I was at home, made me feel like I just wanted to be there and part of the action. Some of it will be the crew members or the cast that was part of the show that made me want to hang out here, but some of it is just really cool locations themselves. So let's just get into it. All right, number 5 on my list is going to be from one of my favorite shows. Kind of slept on, unless you know. If you know, you know. It's gonna be The Weekenders. More specifically, the arcade from The Weekenders. If you've seen the show, there'll be pictures you can see. If you've seen the show, the opening sequence has a pretty cool, quick little arcade scene where they're on a little motorcycle bikes and they're shifting side to side. And in the episodes themselves, they would frequent the arcade quite a bit. They would go there to play pool. They had episodes there where they met guys and girls, and just arcade settings themselves have always been one of my favorites because it's so accessible. When you're a kid, you can't really go to clubs, you can't, go to bars, whatever. The arcade was the closest thing that we had to kind of having that environment. You go and you hang out with your friends, you get a little soda pop, and you play some games and see who's the best or try to beat a game. And you keep going back each week to try to get further in that game. And I feel like The Weekenders capture that really well. Again, some of it could be the cast members because I enjoyed the entire cast of The Weekenders. That made me feel like I want to be there even more. But watching this, I was always excited when they had an episode that took place in the arcade itself. The whole scene of it, they're in LA, I believe. Not LA, but like Santa Monica area. So it had that kind of scene, the beach scene and all that stuff. But for me, the arcade was probably my favorite location that they frequented. Okay, coming in my list at number 4 is going to be the library from In Between the Lions. Now, aside from having a fucking wonderful opening theme song, The Lions was a fun show that, explored little skits and was helpful in learning because it was, I believe, a PBS show, so it had to be, educational at the end of the day. So this is more of playing into the whole, I don't know, it's like, cottage core, like on TikTok where you're in a cottage and you're away from everything and it just captures that. Like Ghibli films kind of have like cottage core vibes where you're just like on the outskirts of town and you're making your own bread and your food, whatever. This kind of feeds into that whole thing for me. It's just like when you think of a library, you think about being surrounded by books, old books, having the smell of paper, and you get a little blanket, get some coffee, and you sit by a fireplace and you read a book. That's what In Between the Lions library captured for me. Not to mention the outside of it is beautiful. It gives me like X-Men, Professor Xavier, the school of gifted children vibes. That's what it gives me. But every time I would see the show, I'd be like, oh, I can't wait to go in between the lines because you're going in between the lines to get into the library. And yeah, the library just feels very warm. And the characters, again, just having them be furry, I guess, kind of added to the warm aesthetic for me. And yeah, just being immersed in books all the time. I'm not like the biggest reader anymore, but back in the day I was. So I enjoyed a book here or there. So I think it'd be cool to just kind of chill out for a day inside of the library and read a few books with some lions, because when do you get to do that? Never. So that's my number 4. All right, coming in at number 3 on the list is going to be the Kids Next Door Clubhouse. It's every kid's dream to have a clubhouse, especially a tree house, and watching Kids Next Door capture that entire vibe correctly. You look at the outside, you're like, that's ridiculous. What kind of tree is that big? How can you put a whole Titanic-looking ship inside of it? But then you go inside of it and you see it just looks like a regular clubhouse, except way cooler and way more functioning than you would think would be for a children's clubhouse. and you're just hanging out with your buddies. Again, another one of those cast member things where it helps the vibe a little bit. Although this felt more kind of separate because they all have their own rooms individually. They were hardly ever together, like in there just chilling. But you know, it's a vibe. I would say it's a kid's treehouse vibe. I never had one growing up. Everybody always wanted one. Here where I live, there's not too many big trees where you can do that. Also, you know, more of the upperclassmen people kind of have Clubhouse. All right, with the lower class, we don't really have the luxury. Our treehouse is on the streets and running before the lights turn on. But yeah, so that's my number 3 is gonna be Kids Next Door's Clubhouse because I always wanted to have a treehouse / clubhouse. Okay, number 2 coming in at the dream places I'd like to hang out as a kid growing up. It's going to be Titans Tower. That's right, Teen Titans Tower. It's kind of like an upgraded version of the Kids Next Door's Clubhouse, except this is way cooler because you're a teenager essentially when you're here. So I guess once you graduate from being a kid next door, you become a teenager and you get to go live with the Teen Titans. It's a cool design, the T shape out by the ocean. It's just a cool location and an iconic building, and it's just vibes the whole time when you're hanging out with your friends. You live, it's pretty much like the real world. I feel like whenever we had a scene inside of the Titans Tower, it felt like an episode of Real World where everyone's just kind of like doing their thing and there's drama here or there. Who ate the last dish of whatever? Hey, you didn't clean your room, make sure you do this, all this fun stuff. And also they get to have places that inside of there that they can train and keep themselves in shape. So yeah, it felt very much like a real world house, which to me was cool seeing as a kid because like you don't really get to live on your own as a teenager, but they were doing it every day, making it happen. They were clapping cheeks. They didn't show it, but we all knew what they were doing. You had all that privacy and you're a teenager? Of course they're doing that. So yeah, Teen Titans Tower would be awesome because it's a vibe. That's all it is. It's you hang out with your friends and yeah, Teen Titans Tower, number 2. And coming in at number 1 is going to be the best place to hang out as a child, as a teenager, present day, any time of your life would be an awesome place to live. It's going to be Arnold's room from Hey Arnold. That's right. It's the quintessential. I don't really know how to say that word. It's the one you think about the most when you think about dream places to hang out. It's Arnold's room. People in New York, it's pretty much a location. I know they said that the location is technically Portland, the creator said, but we all know it was more New York than it was Portland, okay? So you having this room in New York right now would probably cost you about $8,000 a month just to rent it, and Arnold had it for free. He has an amazing skylight. He has a cool little just walk-through design. It's kind of like his own studio, really. He has his bed under the under the skylight. He has his desk set up. He has a little fold-out couch for when his homies come over and sleep there. The carpet's cool. The design's cool. And not to mention he has access to the roof. And in New York, I imagine having access to a roof would be an amazing luxury because you're not really surrounded by a lot of like outside scenery. So having a balcony is not that cool, but having an upstairs balcony is really cool because you can just chill out there, look at the skyline, look at the people walking by, all that fun stuff. Yeah, and Arnold had access to this as a 10 to 11-year-old. It's just awesome. There's plenty of scenes where he's just laying in his bed listening to music, looking up at the sky, and you're like, wow, I wish I had that. Only downside is he lives in a boarding house with a bunch of crazy people, but hey, maybe that's kind of interesting. You get to get some more character growing up in that boarding house. Maybe that's why Arnold was so mature growing up, because of all the experiences he gets to experience himself. And yeah, I don't know, I just feel like Arnold's room is the number 1 place that people want to stay, they would want to have, they want to recreate, because it's so modern, even though it was made, you know, back in the 90s. Even now, if you had any of that design in your home now, people would be like, wow, that's really sick. Especially the skylight. Skylight is obviously the main draw of the whole room, but the whole room itself, to me, is just comfort, and I just want to be there. Okay, so that's my list right there. Make sure you guys, you know, as always, subscribe down below, follow down below, all that fun stuff, and let me know what are your top 5, top 10, top 2 imaginary places from TV that we saw growing up that you want to hang out. I'm sure there was a bunch. There was a bunch of honorable mentions. Honorable mention that was going to be on the list but wasn't on my list was going to be the Clubhouse from Out of the Box. That was really cool, but I couldn't really find any like pictures of it, but I do remember loving that place. But yeah, there's plenty of places that are really cool to hang out. So yeah, just let me know down below what some of your favorites are. Subscribe, all that fun stuff, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.